I'll say a few words in Arabic first. السلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته. تحياتي لكم وأهنئكم بمرور 50 عاما على إنشاء الاتحاد العربي الكندي، ونتمنى أن يكون فيه خير ومنفعة للمجتمع العربي في كندا وحماية حقوقنا الثابتة في القانون الدولي. Good evening. Congratulations on your 50th year anniversary of the founding of Canadian Arab Federation. It's great that it is still functioning, and I hope it's functioning very well for the benefit of the Arab community in Canada and abroad. As one of the founders, I would like to tell you why and how CAF was founded 50 years ago. 1967 was an earthquake. It was an explosion in our life, still shattering our lives till today. The news came one day that the Israeli occupation of Jerusalem took place. Jerusalem fell. Then Al-Khalil fell. Then Hebron, Gaza, Nablus, Sinai, the Golan Heights, they all fell under Israeli occupation. We were hoping for the opposite. We were hoping for the recovery of our occupied land in Jaffa, Haifa, and Akka. Now the terrible news came that more and more Palestinian land was occupied. What was worse for us in Canada, there was rejoicing in England, in Canada and USA, rejoicing in the newspapers, rejoicing in the streets that we were defeated. The motto was, here is a small little nation, one victory over massive savage Arabs. Of course, it was a big lie. Now we know that Israel engineered the aggression of 1967 from many years before, for many reasons. One is to take over the Jordan waters. Secondly, to occupy all Palestine. Thirdly, to topple Jamal Abdel Nasser. Now we know that the reverse was true, that we were the victim and they were the aggressors. But the media, controlled by them, did not tell the story. So we have to fight. We have to fight for the truth to shine. We in the United States, Ibrahim Abu Lod, and Edward Said, and Nasir Aruri formed the Arab American University Graduates Association. And that was the first attempt to group the Arab community in the United States. So we decided to form the Canadian Arab Federation, CAF. But Canada was a very big country, and we did not know where the communities are. They were scattered all over Canada, from Newfoundland to British Columbia. We even located a small community called Lac La Biche, where the mayor is Lebanese and the chief of police is Lebanese, and most of the people there are Lebanese. You remember in these days, the communities, Arab communities, are mostly Lebanese, and the new generations have not yet arrived. But there was no internet, and there was no communication to reach them. There was also only the mail, and the long distance call was very expensive. So we tried our best. We located about 80 communities in this area, and we got together with them. We formed the first CAF with Ibrahim Salti as president. Dr. Ibrahim Salti is now professor at the American University of Beirut, and I was elected as vice president. We had great people like Jamil Boutros and Habib Saloum. They were the older generation whose families came to Canada in the early 20th century, even in the 19th century. So we started talking to all public outlets. I was invited to Kiwanis Club and to Rotary Club and to United Church and to other outlets. We wrote letters in the newspapers in order to explain that we were the victims and now we are subject to military occupation. And so we held the first CAF conference. And in this picture you will see, here I am speaking, next to me on the right side is Brahim Salti, and on the left side, George Toma. George Toma was the representative of the Arab League at the United Nations. And we tried to explain that we have rights in our country and the occupation is illegal according to international law. But of course, the Zionists acted against us. They incited the RCMP to investigate us as being dangerous people. So one day I received in my office an officer from RCMP. He was a nice guy and he did not know the first thing about Palestine. So I gave him a 1-hour lesson about the history of Palestine. He left seemingly pleased, never came back. Then we started writing letters. So we wrote a letter to the Prime Minister of Canada, and we told him about the violations of the Israeli occupation in accordance or not in accordance with the Geneva Convention. We started a media campaign and public affairs campaign. We published a newsletter called the Arab Dawn. You can see it here, and it is in 3 languages, Arabic, English, and French. We also sent a letter, circular, to the Prime Minister of Canada, supported with 18 documents describing Israeli violations of the Geneva Convention. And we requested meetings with the government officials. Further than that, we have received an invitation from the Special Senate Committee on Mass Media. Upon our request, we asked them to give us time to explain the media bias and the misinformation and the deliberate fabrication of news. So they accepted our request, and I submitted a long report about the media bias in Canada and showed them examples of how the truth was distorted completely. Then we requested a meeting with Mitchell Sharp, who was then the Foreign Minister of Canada. He received a delegation from CAF and he listened carefully. Then he said that your delegation has efficiently described the situation in the occupied territories, and we are against the violation of human rights there. But the next day in the press, when we announced that in the press, he said, no, I did not say that. So here you have duplicity on opinion, which unfortunately is still there. Then we started also a campaign in newspapers. Here is one in the Montreal Star: Arabs seek more Canadian support. We also published other newspaper articles, and our conference, which was held next time in Ottawa, it says, La Fédération Canado-Arabe dénonce l'attitude anti-Arab do notre pays. We also published articles or published about us in Le Devoir. So there was a lot of activity in that regard. Naturally, the Israeli supporting groups have accused us of the usual things. Here is one example, and which is of course atrocious. By the way, these tactics of smearing the people who are speaking about justice and freedom, they are still being used today. Now, there has been many things since that time, And I conclude by saying, you have a duty to insist on the same principles. United Nations law, international law, human rights, call for justice and freedom for people, the right of refugees to return to their homes. Now, at the moment, we have the West Bank occupied under military rule, a brutal rule with 500 stopping points or cross points where people cannot cross, with all kinds of demolishing of houses, expulsion of people, and so on. In Gaza, it's even worse. It is the largest concentration camp in the world. It's under siege now for 10 years, and people are deprived from water, medicine, food, and movement. Well, you can see that the latest report by United Nations, ESQA report, which said apartheid Israel applies to all Palestinians, whether they are in Palestine itself, in the West Bank, in Gaza, or 1948, or abroad. So there is no question that peace cannot prevail in the area without the restoration of justice and freedom. My last word to you, do not despair and do not give up. Our rights are eternal, and keep up the struggle so that Palestine will be free. Thank you very much.